Ned, hello. How you doing?
How's it going? I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well, mate. You landed in Peru, correct? Is that where you're at?
Yeah. We're in Lima. We just got here, I don't know, an hour or two ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we are in the middle of a Latin American tour. And right before that, we were in Europe for two shows. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place for the time being. And then, yeah, it continues into next month as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I imagine after that run of shows, you've maybe got a little bit of a break, and then you're straight over here for New Bloom to do Australia. So you're just jet setting around the world. You should get like one of those round the world tickets.
Yeah. And honestly, before this too, the last touring we did was in Japan and Southeast Asia.
That sounds like an absolute mammoth kind of undertaking to travel to all these places and play all these shows. I have to ask, like, how are you feeling? How are you doing mentally, physically, spiritually? Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, mentally I'm fine. We had a pretty rough day the other day where we had a show in Guatemala, and around 11 or so got back to the hotel at like 11:30, and then we had a flight to Costa Rica that left the airport at 5:30 a.m. So we had to leave for the airport at like 4 or something. So yeah, like there's days like that where that's a lot, and that's kind of abnormal. But besides lack of sleep, I feel fine. I don't know. I feel kind of odd in that this kind of amount of traveling is something that I'm somewhat used to, even if don't really do it in this kind of capacity for however long. But yeah, I don't know. I'm perfectly content to just kind of throw myself into these situations and see what happens.
Yeah, and I would imagine like you've been playing in bands, since your teens. You've been in these successful international touring bands for a very long time. So you're fairly old hat at all this sort of stuff. So I would imagine there's an element of kind of familiarity with being on the road, being on planes, touring, doing all this business. Like, do you feel like it's become kind of like a second nature and a routine for you, or are there still kind of new curveballs that get thrown your way?
I mean, there are certain aspects that are always new, and there are certain aspects that are always familiar, and I feel like those two things are constantly shifting. I think it's just such like everything is so odd and kind of like peculiar, and just that like sometimes the thing that you feel like the best end up being completely different, and that's just because even with the routine of doing similar things day in and day out, certain things are always going to change a little bit, and because the variables are so drastically different, it makes the whole situation feel kind of crazy. But yeah, I don't know. There is like just a level of comfort to kind of just engaging in this kind of, I don't know, weird schedule. I don't know. There's something about it that almost feels nostalgic to me at times. Just doing this kind of thing of just kind of showing up, having no idea what you're going to be doing, and just kind of figuring it out.
I want to talk about Glitterer for a little bit and kind of tracking the kind of evolution of the project, because in many of the ways of the stuff that we've just been chatting about, these kind of changes to your lifestyle and the things that you're doing with music and your career, Glitterer has gone under a similar kind of evolutionary path, something that started, I'm guessing, in the pandemic or kind of beforehand, and then it's drastically kind of evolved into a fully fledged band collaborative project, which is the form that it's in now. So I guess, how do you feel looking back on where the project started to where you are now, kind of taking it, quite literally all over the world?
Yeah. I started the band by myself in 2017.
Right.
And it started that way mostly due to just circumstance. I was finishing up school and I was living in New York, and access to practice spaces were pretty tough. And also it's just like I felt like I didn't have a lot of time. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to stay busy doing something. And so I just started playing music, and it was just kind of the thing that I felt like I had always done, which was just trying to, I don't know, try to do something to like engage that part of my brain, because, you know, I love music and I love playing music, and I like just that whole side of things. And so I just wanted to do that in whatever capacity I could at that time. And that was mostly just kind of, you know, sporadically around town on the weekends when I could. And then when my whole context kind of shifted when I finished school and I moved, it became a thing where I had permission to kind of like return to touring and being like a little bit more legitimate or something. But it just felt like, I don't know, I just wanted to continue to play music. And so because I had a little bit more time, it kind of evolved into something that was, you know, I guess a little more serious in regard to like, we played more shows and released an LP or two, and did kind of that kind of typical kind of, I don't know, like band kind of narrative structure kind of thing. And then the pandemic hit, and that's around the time when it evolved into a full unit. Uh, you know, and then that was kind of like the easiest, most natural part of the whole thing to me, because I've been playing in bands since I was a kid, and returning to a band is a very easy thing for me to do. It's a structure that I understand very well. And it's something that I feel very comfortable in. And so once the pieces were in place to play with people, it just felt to me like it was just kind of returning to a thing that I was very familiar with. And that made it very easy for me to just kind of return to how it, you know, return to how I just think a band should work. You know, and yeah, and that just kind of took us back to here, which is kind of touring a little bit more seriously and working on music in earnest, and just trying to play when we can.
I've been kind of going through some old interviews of yours to pull some bits and pieces together for our chat today, and I was reading your feature in Antimatter with Norman Brannon, who's friend of the show, who we had on last year, and I love Norman's writing, and that feature in particular is brilliant and very illuminating on your thought process and kind of where the kind of like kernel for Glitterer came about. I wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit more. There's a part in that feature where you talk about kind of relishing in not having as much pressure on Glitterer to be a certain thing, whereas you may have felt that pressure in Title Fight previously. And there's a particular quote where you say it's like nice not to feel like you owe anyone anything. So I wanted to kind of flip that and ask you, like, what do you feel that you owe Glitterer now that it's a collaborative project, or more so than it may have started out being?
I feel like the first thing that popped in my head when you asked that is just kind of, I feel like I owe it the seriousness that it deserves.
Yeah.
And I think that it's, I don't know, I feel bad because it feels like kind of a vague answer in a way, but to me, I don't know, I take music very seriously. You know, even if it's just playing music with three of my friends in a practice space, you know?
Yeah.
Even if the stakes are not very high, but it's just something that really means a lot to me. And so when we get together and we're trying to do stuff, I just want to do it the best that we can. I want to just kind of I want to just take things seriously. I wanted to kind of control the situation the best that we can, kind of in a creative sense and also in a logistical sense. I just want to I want to put all the thought that we need into every step, and just make decisions that we believe in and agree with, and just kind of lead the band with those kind of things.
Yeah.
So it's like a kind of all encompassing kind of seriousness to me, because it's, I care about the music very much, but I also care about the way that we run the band, and I also care about the way that we do things. And so all of that comes into play for me, where I'm trying to just make sure everything feels right.
I feel like this sense of kind of seriousness, but I would kind of more call it like this sense of intentionality, really it was pronounced for me in listening to Rationale, because not only is it a fantastic record, but I feel like there's this idea of intention and logic and reason and a way of doing things with purpose and intent that comes through on that record in several kind of lyrical passages. So like, I guess talk to me about that record in particular, how you think it sits within the band's kind of back catalog, and what were you trying to get across on that record in particular?
The funny thing about that record being like the first band record to me is that I feel like I had like I don't know, a pretty attempted wide scope for the first two LPs, where I was trying to discuss pretty, I don't know, big ideological things through these kind of personal and sometimes cryptic songs.
Yeah.
And then when we started getting together for Rationale, that was post pandemic, in a like coming off the heels of feeling like I would never be able to play music again in any sort of capacity. Like there was a moment in time where I felt like shows would just be impossible. Like any sort of gathering would just be illegal forever. Like it felt like that for like a couple days.
Yeah,
and
it
so
felt bleak there for a very significant portion of time.
Yeah, and so kind of like returning to playing music from that point with other people, and turning it into this thing where I feel like pointing the lens inward a lot, but at the same time, it was in the context of this new post-pandemic world that was eerily similar, but also very different. And so a lot of it, the record is about this kind of like return to purpose, and the purpose for me being playing music, and it being kind of tongue in cheek in a way, because it's like, what a ridiculous thing to say. Like my purpose is to play these little songs, it's like, I recognize how ridiculous that sounds, and how like stupid it is to kind of like sit there and be like, this is like what I'm here to do. And then kind of in the context of just like the way that the whole world shifted in that short time span of being like, does anybody have any purpose? Like, are jobs necessary to like, do we need to do these things that we do constantly just because it just felt like everything that I kind of had thought about was kind of, I don't know, like not proven to be untrue, but like it definitely made me shift my opinions on a lot of things.
Yeah, a healthy amount of skepticism.
yeah, for sure. And so, it was approaching this new thing where, it was like turning inwards, and kind of like using myself as my own personal punching bag in a lighthearted way that I think it can be read in an earnest way, and I think it could be read in not a satirical way, but like a more lighthearted tone. But at the same time, both of these things are standing in for hopefully a more universal experience. And it's, I use myself as the kind of perspective, but it's not supposed to stop there. And I think that's always the goal, is because if the things are only for you, like, then nobody is going to care. And I don't mean that from like some sort of stupid marketing perspective. I just mean in terms of like, I don't know, interacting with people and being understood. And so, yeah, it is this thing where there's, for me, a couple different layers going on. And honestly, I feel like I'm still kind of uncovering what I'm entirely saying with a lot of those songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is just about, I don't know, like zooming in and zooming out at the same time of thinking about the entire picture and how you fit into it.
I think one of my favorite songs on the record is the closer, Half Truth. And there's a part in that really kind of speaks to this kind of duality or tension that you were talking about like having something serious, but then also kind of like paradoxically being kind of like a satirical kind of self-deprecation of itself. And you talk about like, I used to worry that I didn't exist, but now I don't care and I'm a hypocrite. And there's this idea of like an existential kind of thought process, kind of undercut by a sense of nihilism. But I think in a relatable way, everyone has been prone to that kind of solipsism and getting caught up in their own head and wondering like, does anything outside actually matter? Like, what the fuck's going on inside me? So I think that's what makes the record so captivating to me, is that not only is it engaging at an instrumental level, but I feel like you are wrestling with a lot of very universal themes in a very, relatable way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, honestly, I feel like solipsism was like my number one target for the band.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm reading into that correctly. Great.
Yeah. It's like I think because the band started, at the kind of the beginning of the Trump era.
Yeah.
And I was kind of looking at these things, and trying to figure out like how we got to this point. And I feel like so much of it kind of came from this selfishness that kind of spawned from solipsism.
Yeah.
Of only looking out for yourself, of not really caring about other people, because it's like, we enter these kind of heady spaces of being like, am I like, I don't know, do other people really feel the same way that I do? Can anybody understand anything? Does anything really exist? And then it felt like it got to this point where it was like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I only need to look out for myself, and I only need to ensure that I have some sort of stability in my life. And then we ended up where we're at,
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think the thing is, for me, I wanted to approach it critically, but not nihilistically.
Mm.
And it's because the thing is, like, I don't know, my thought on this whole thing is we have no choice but to wake up every day. Like it is just our reality. Like we just have to continue on. And I'm not going to just like sit here and think that we're doomed and that like everything is over because the culture has shifted in a way that I feel is problematic. It's, like I think if I felt that way truly, that I would be like inconsolable. And then I don't even think I'd be able to do anything, like let alone play music. And so for me, and it's tough because I feel like, music is and the community that we belong to is, I think, ideally a place where most people share these beliefs, and share our value set of caring about other people and trying to make the world a better place, whatever that means, and like trying to just ensure that people are treated fairly. And so it's like, I know I'm talking to people who understand what I'm going through and thinking about, but it's, I think ideally it's trying to make the community feel understood, and then to extend beyond that somehow, to just bring that into your whatever daily life, to just bring it into the community that you exist in outside of music, to just bring it into the world. which is maybe too idealistic a goal, but I don't know what else to do. Like this is, and I guess this also like returns to the last question of like the ridiculousness of acting like, like this is what I'm supposed to do, like play music, like what a ridiculous thing to say. But it's like, this is the thing that I feel like I am able to get this point across with, it's not like my life is either a success or failure, depending on how well this goes or something. It's not like that, but it is something that's like, I at least just want to put this out there into the world and attempt to just be a little bit more empathetic and put that out there.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Speaking of cultural impact and kind of changes and shifts, I've seen some recent kind of reappraisal of Hyperview and Title Fight coming into kind of discourse and conversation again. So I wanted to kind of ask you, in this focus on Glitterer and what you've managed to achieve with your current project, I'm curious to know, do you think of Glitterer as a hardcore band? And I preface that by saying that I always thought of Title Fight as a hardcore band strictly in your ethos and the way that you guys approached your music, the presentation, everything that you did with that group, rather than it being some kind of rigid definition of like a sonic category. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I've heard other people make the same kind of claim. So with Glitterer, like, you're obviously doing different music, you're doing different things, but is your approach still the same? And I guess, does that even matter? Do you even have that mindset when it comes to what you're doing with Glitterer?
Yeah, I really only have one mindset, I learned how to like exist in this world and how to make music and how to do all these things in the punk and hardcore scene.
Yeah.
I still exist in that world, and I still think about all these things through that lens that I got when I was a kid. And it's changed. Like I think about things differently than I did when I was, 12, 13 years old getting into punk. But it's still like this, I don't know, this perspective that is almost entirely informed by that scene. And so, yeah, I think the kind of argument that
hardcore
is an ideology is almost a tired one, but it's something that I believe in, I feel like it is an approach and it is an ideology more than it is an aesthetic. And I feel like, I don't know, the language around it becomes confusing, and even like the way that I approach talking about it has shifted, because it's like, I don't want to, I don't know. I don't want to like position myself against other people and say like I'm more hardcore than other people because I do this kind of thing. Like I don't care about that. I just feel like the things that I'm doing and just the way that I approach the world has always come from this perspective, and it's still not even very much a part of me. Like it is almost entirely me, everything about this is through that perspective and that lens. And so, yeah, Glitterer still operates in the same exact way that Title Fight operated, because that's just the only way I know how to do things.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what I learned when I was young. And I still feel like it's important to continue that tradition to this day.
Hell yeah. I think we might wrap things up there. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I know you've been traveling and doing all those sorts of things, but Ned, thank you so much for taking time with me today. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.
Sweet. Thank you very much. Subscribe now to the Pitch of Discontent Patreon to receive access to extended cuts of our bonus episodes, as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes content, monthly Patreon-only episodes, member-only votes, the TPD community chat, and much more. Go now to patreon.com/tpdpod and join for as little as $5 a month. That link again is patreon.com/tpdpod. Thanks for watching the show.